It is a Monday. Welcome aboard. It is August 30th, and it is a brand new episode of Let There Be Talk brought to you by my podcast network, cactusradionetwork.com. Yes, I do have my own network, and there are many shows on it, my friends, including Dark Fonzie, The Grail, At Home with Byron Katie, and Let There Be Talk. Thank you for supporting me through this new journey. I'm digging it. It's happening. A lot of work, but worth it. Also, I want to thank all my Patreoners out there, especially you long-term Patreoners that have been hanging out with me on the Zoom Fest and enjoying the bonus episodes. I have some brand new Patreoners I want to give a quick shout out to. Honey Tape Deck, Jorge Portillo, Troy Paffenberg, Bob Price, Ross Story, Bill Mungai, and Aled Jones. Thank you, you new Patreoners. Patreon.com/Dean Del Rey. All right, let's get into the business here right now. Let's get into the art. Let's get into the guest. Who is the guest? It is a brand new musician artist that I have absolutely fallen in love with her music. Her name is Kate Vargas, and my good old friend Eric McFadden, who plays guitar in her band, turned me on to this record, Rumpumpo, and I was blown away. I love me some outside the box rock and roll, some outside the box music, something that is not your run of the mill, and when it hits me, I'm ready to find out all about it. And that's what I did with Kate Vargas. Heard the record, immediately told Eric I must have her on the podcast. And when I was in New York City a few weeks ago, we sat down and talked about how she started and how she got the sound, her influences, and coming from New Mexico and landing in New York City via Boston. A lot of good stories here. So I want you guys to dig into this and then listen to her music after, because I don't recommend something that I don't like. Everybody knows that. I've been doing this for 10 years. I don't just throw something on. So if it's on this show, it's on for a reason. So check it out. Kate Vargas, great guest. Wow. All right, some shows are coming up. And I have a merch page, finally. I am no longer filling out the merchandise labels and standing in the post office line for days. I have a full merch store now, and that is at deandelrey.com. You can get your Dark Fonzie stuff, you can get your Gertie merch, and you can get the Dean Del Rey shirts and hats and patches, all kinds of stuff at deandelrey.com, where also you can find all my new tour dates. San Diego, I'm coming to the La Jolla Comedy Store, September 10, 11, 12. Please get tickets for these people in advance. It really eases my mind. Like, oh God, there's going to be people there. San Jose, I'm going to be at the Treehouse, October 9th. And Des Moines, Iowa, I'm coming back to Teehees, October 22, 23. And Comedy Cellar, Las Vegas, I'm spending the week with you, Halloween week, October 25th through the 31st. Those are some dates out there right now. I also have a Portland and a Eugene date coming with my good friend Shaylin McDonough opening for me. Yes, indeed. It was a great weekend. I hope you had a great weekend. And I hope you're feeling okay. There is a lot of that lunacy going out there still. A lot of battle over vaccines and COVID and what you should and shouldn't do. And politics are still fucking out there flaring up. And what else? We got hurricanes and fucking other country wars and shit. Oh, man. How do you stay from getting your cage rattled out there? I tell you what I do. I grab me some CBD Lion. I go the CBD, man. I'm telling you, it works. Family owned, clean CBD. I use it for multiple things. When I get anxiety or I'm having a hard time sleeping, I grab the CBD tinctures. When I'm having some joint ache and neck problems, I do the roll-on topical stuff. Unbelievable, the CBD. And Gertie, my dog, loves a little CBD pet treats. They've got pet treats. CBD line, 20% off when you use the code DEAN. I highly recommend you use this stuff. It really helps, man. It's not some kind of voodoo juice or snake oil. People are like, crazy. You think I would just fall for that shit? I'm telling you, CBD Lion, pride in performance. This is clean stuff. It's not your truck stop bullshit. Get it right now. Use the code DEAN and save 20%. A lot of good stuff on there. A lot of good stuff. CBD topicals, the tinctures, the gummies, hemp flower, broad spectrum capsules. I mean, all of your CBD needs. CBD's getting bigger and bigger, man. People realize this shit's real. CBDlion.com. Use the code DEAN. Thank you so much for your support. And do not forget to come see me live out there. That's why I do the podcast, hoping to put some butts in the seats so I can make you laugh, my friends, hopefully. Come on out and see me. I love you guys. Let's get into it right now. The amazing Kate Vargas. All right, here we are, another episode of Let There Be Talk. A fantastic artist with me today. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kate Vargas.
Kate Vargas, musician, rock and roller out here in New York City.
Yeah. Wow, it's been a while since I've been called a rock and roller. I feel that feels good.
Well, I mean, I'm listening to the record, which, by the way, what do you call this record? What's it called? Rumpumpo?
Rumpumpo.
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 And it just came out, and I didn't know who you were until recently through our mutual friend, Eric McFadden, who plays on this record and is in the group. And you guys do all kinds of music together. But I put it on, and I was like, this is incredible. I love this. And immediately I was like, I got to get you on the show. Let's get some ears on this damn record. Let's get into it. We're out in New York City. You're from New Mexico. Mm-hmm. How the hell do you get into music? And how do you get into the style? Because I would say it's kind of got a Tom Waits vibe, and it's not your Katy Perry's in a world of... what is that show? The Voice and all that stuff. Right. So let's get into that.
Yeah, well, it's been a journey, and it took time, to develop my sound. And I think, it's like finding out who I am and also finding out, who I am as a musician. But I started when I was growing up in New Mexico, playing the flute.
The flute, so yeah, because I heard you rocking some flute.
I got to rock some flute, which was really kind of what I always wanted growing up. But because I started in the classical world,
yeah.
So I started with classical flute, and then there was a bit of a jazz scene in Albuquerque when I was growing up, and so I got into jazz, and I was, jazz flute pretty much my whole growing up.
How do you get into jazz flute? Are you like listening to like Miles Davis and stuff, or just jazz around the house? How does that happen?
It was mostly it was totally an accident. I mean, it was that, I went to a really small school. We didn't have like a band, that there was this old jazz guy, a trumpet player, and they hired him to do band. And so he did this little jazz ensemble. That was the only option for like a musician, playing music at school. So that's how I got into it. And then in Albuquerque, there's this place called the Outpost, which is this great little club, and they do all sorts of things, but at the time it was a lot of jazz, and they had an after-school program with Dave Parlato, who played bass with Zappa.
Whoa.
And yeah, and he did this after-school thing, and it was just
there's the key right there.
And it was like so great, and I looked forward to it all the time. And he was like this guy that was like, I would lift up my foot. I don't know what it is about flute players and like lifting up the foot.
Oh, yeah, the old hey Aqualung move, right?
I don't know. It feels like a natural thing to do, like when you're playing flute. I don't know, like it's kind of Pied Piper-y.
Yeah.
But I would do that, and he's like, keep you gotta keep your feet on the ground. He might have played barefoot or something, but he was like, that the energy comes up from the ground. So you gotta stay grounded. And then he would do these things like, he would have us, there were 7 of us, and he'd be like, all right, play the color purple. And then we just all play the color purple. He would do things like this. And so it really, that was very appealing to me coming from like this classical world,
I mean, you had the proper teacher right there out of the gate of somebody that understands playing music outside the box.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, I always said like Zappa and P-Funk, these type of groups were playing stuff that was not even close to the radio, but was so musical and original and cool that you wondered, what were those people listening? And over the years, I've been lucky enough to interview people from Zappa's band and find out what they were listening to, because there seems to be a few people like me that played music where it's, you hear the AM radio. Like me, it was all the early hits like the Jackson 5 and the pop stuff of like the Partridge Family. And then you hear something else and you go, oh, whoa. But there's even people that are next level, the Zappa type of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I put Tom Waits in that category too.
Oh, yeah.
Captain
of course.
Beefheart.
Of course. Yeah. Captain Beefheart. I'm just saying early on when I'm younger and I'm hearing Zappa and I'm hearing P-Funk, I'm like, whoa. Then later, I mean, I was never a Tom Waits guy until Bone Machine. And when Bone Machine happened, that was just a mind boggler to me. And by then, my brain was ready for different music.
Right.
All kinds of stuff going on in San Francisco. Anything, not a city band, but anything from like Tool to Zappa to Bone Machine. And it just all those different mixtures of music.
Yeah, I definitely feel that too. I'm glad that I had that experience, that sort of primed me for the more outside the box stuff. Because I was started listening to music in the mid 90s.
Oh yeah, so that's
when I was getting into music.
Stuff like that's happening.
Yes, and also some.
Backstreet Boys type boy band. Yeah,
like
I get it.
I needed someone from the outside to be like, hey, check this stuff out.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really glad I had that. I actually just did a thing for a Santa Fe paper, and I didn't know they were going to do this. It just came out a couple days ago, and they went and talked to Dave Parlato, this guy.
Wow.
And I don't know if he actually remembers me. He said he did, but
yeah.
I was like, oh, I can't believe they tracked him down. And
wow.
He's not in New Mexico anymore, but actually his daughter is this incredible singer, jazz singer, Gretchen Parlato.
Wow.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I've seen her here in New York, and yeah, so that was my sort of beginnings.
So you're playing flute. And then you switched to guitar?
Well, the thing was, I wanted to play guitar the whole time. That was my ultimate. That's what I wanted. And, my mother is really wonderful. But she had some ideas about, what she wanted me to do the whole kind of symphony orchestra, youth orchestra thing, which I did. But you couldn't do that with guitar or drums, which were my 2 first choices.
No. Yeah.
And actually, she really was hooked on me playing piano, and I remember we went to the music store. It's called King's. It's not there anymore, but my grandmother had given us money to buy a keyboard, and we went up to the front to check out, and I was just like fought like authority problems right from the start, and I was like, no, I'm not gonna play that thing. I'm not going to play that thing. And my mother was really wanting me to play music, which I'm so glad for. But she was like, all right, well, what are you going to play then? And I was like, I'm going to play that thing. And I just pointed to a flute. I never heard a flute before.
Wow.
I was just like, I'm going to play that thing. She's like, all right, if you're going to play that thing, I'll support you,
Yeah. Well, the cool thing about the flute is you can just carry it with you.
Oh, it's great. That's one thing that, like, then I got to play guitar and all this stuff, and now carry around a guitar, drag around a guitar, but it makes me miss my flute days because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that was so nice. I could just go anywhere with it. Didn't hurt my back.
Hard to write songs on a flute, huh?
Yeah.
Can you imagine? You're like, all right, guys, this one goes like this. Yeah.
My sister does this thing. She's like, she has this like very kind of visceral memory of hearing me practice flute, and it's really funny because it's like this really breathy, like when you're learning to play flute, it's yeah, it's like that.
Yeah.
That whole thing. It really brings back memories for her. But
Your sister plays music also, right?
she does. Yeah, she's. I'm sort of glad that she didn't choose to do it professionally because she would far. She's way better than me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. She's a really, really great singer, and she plays percussion, and she's toured with me doing both those things. So
That's so cool.
yeah, it's great. It's really great.
So how do you get out of New Mexico? Do you land in New York or are you bouncing around?
Yeah, I ended up in Boston. I would go to the library and read these jazz history books, and I kept seeing that Berklee College of Music come up. I just kept seeing that. And so I decided when I was very young that that's what my next step would be. I was like, that's what I want to do. I'm going to go there. And, people were kind of like, okay. But it was the thing that I just decided, and so that's where I ended up, which was awesome.
So you landed, what year was that?
That was 2005.
Well, not that long ago.
Not
Like what, 16
it
years
feels
ago? Something?
really
Yeah.
long ago, but
Yeah.
that's I ended up in Boston. I'd never been to the Northeast before, New England, nothing like that. And you used to, at that time, you could if you were far enough away from an audition site, you could send a CD, burn a CD,
Yeah.
send it. And so I got to do that. So I never visited campus or met anybody from Berklee, and I landed in Boston with, my instrument. And
Berklee School of Music.
yeah, and I was just like, I felt like out of a movie, where I just that I was exactly small town, Albuquerque. But I grew up in a little village outside Albuquerque.
A village? What kind of
Yeah,
village?
It's a village. It's a artist and farmer village.
Yeah, are you from a hippie family?
I would say maybe there's a hippie streak, but there's my father had the long hair and bell bottoms and had always a camera around his neck, and that was sort of his, and did yoga.
Yeah.
And they weren't, by the time we came around, they were doing different stuff. It's like this really great little place, Corrales. There were 2 paved roads when I was growing up, no stoplights.
And did you guys all go to a school, like a kind of a like a cult or something? No.
I wish.
Well, you never know.
No, you never know. No, it wasn't. It wasn't actually that cool. It was. Well, it is cool. It's a really great place. We went to school in Albuquerque when we were little. We went, elementary school. There's a school there in Corrales, but we went to school in Albuquerque, and it was just, it's right outside the city.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, but it's a very interesting place. It's like a combination of like these old hippies who moved there to start a farm or do, their art or stuff. And then these old Mexican families with the roads like named after their family. They've been there a long time, and it was sort of this great community.
That's cool,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
And then there you are now in Boston going to school.
I was like, I am in the big city.
Well, I grew up I was born actually in Yosemite, so I kind of
Okay.
relate to it. And there is a thing when you're young and you get out of there and you go to a big city like Boston, and I'm in the Bay Area, and then you're like, oh yeah, this is what it's about. I'm out of that. But then as you get older and you go back, you're like, oh man, I love this.
100%.
you run free for a while and then you realize, I'm glad I had both. I'm glad I had this hippie, outside the box living into the big city living, the balance of it. And I think your body becomes some kind of meter for that, where you need both, where you're like full tilt city for a while and then you're like, I got to get out of here for a while.
Yeah. I don't know if you feel like this, but growing up where I did, I'm sort of like naturally super mellow.
Yeah.
I'm just like chill and take my time with stuff. And so there's something about, like, I need the city. I need to be in the city because the energy, it's what helps me keep moving. If I'm in a place like
out in the woods, you're just done. Yeah.
I even felt like when we were just in Maui, I'm like, this is paradise. I would love to be here, but also I'd never get anything done.
Well, there is that fear, I always say, of, and I've known this my whole life, is if you're out of the biz for a little while, like even during COVID of a year off or over a year, you start to go like, oh, wow, man, I kind of like being home. Mm-hmm. And then I get on stage and I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I love this, but you can easily lose your calluses and start to melt into a couch looking out the backyard.
Completely.
I got a dog now, so it's just kind of like, oh, yeah,
Totally. That's actually like, not to do this shift, but that's what the album is about. That's what that I just released. It's like, Newton's first law of motion. And it's something that I've been thinking about so much during this time is, this outside force that brought most things to a halt. And how do you find the next outside force to start the motion again? Because I really feel that. It's like when I stop, I'm stopped.
Yeah.
And I need something to kind of get me going again. And it can be a bit, it feels painful, although I think it's just uncomfortable, but it can be a struggle. Yeah.
It can be. It can, with me, I've been on the road most of my life, a lot like Eric. And I think there is a 50-50 of you're running towards something, looking for something, some kind of I don't know what it is that's pushing you to get somewhere. And then the other thing is, stop running and just sit back. And yeah, it can be a struggle on getting started again, especially when it's art, because the less you do it, especially comedy or live performing music, the worse you get immediately, because you need, that's not a natural thing. Sure, a lot of people like myself are natural kind of performers. That's, how we got through the awkward times in life, would be maybe making people laugh or singing a song or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that becomes who you are. But it's never natural just to walk on stage and just here it is.
No.
And no matter how many times you do it. So yeah, it can definitely be a struggle. It's an interesting thing, especially being in a big city, because then you're like, well, man, if I was back in New Mexico, I wouldn't have the insanity and the fears that's going on right now. Mm-hmm. And you might not even have cell signal, so you wouldn't know what's going on. I mean, everywhere's pretty much got cell signal, but once in a while when you run out of it, you're like, oh, man, I don't know what's going on. It's kind of better.
Yeah, it's been so long since I've experienced that. I think I would, I need some of that, I think.
When you get to Berklee, how quick do you start to write some songs? Do you're like, all right, I got to get into writing songs, or you go there and you start going through the process of learning music theory and all that stuff?
Well, I did pick up guitar when I was about 12. I started flute when I was younger, 8, and then I picked up guitar. And so writing songs was always something that I did, but it wasn't the thing that was going to get me out.
Yeah.
And so I think I had this sense that flute was what was going to get me out. And then once I got out, I could do the songwriting thing. So, I stuck with flute that's what got me into college and everything like that. And then I kind of wrote songs almost not in secret, but it wasn't very public, you know.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And
hey, check out my tunes.
Yeah, it was really my dorm room alone.
And were you writing lyrics at the same time too?
Yeah. I've always, since I was very, very little, been into words and poetry and reading and stuff like that. So
reading?
Yeah.
What the hell is that?
Nuts, right? Real books too. I'm not into the Kindle stuff.
I can't go Kindle stuff.
I love a book in my hands.
Same with writing jokes. I like to analog write it.
Yeah.
I'll put it in my phone so I don't forget it if it comes to my mind. But I transfer it immediately to joke books and pieces of paper and stuff.
I love that.
And with books and magazines, there's something about picking it up, opening a page, and getting going.
Totally. There's also like a smell to it. It's a whole body sensation thing.
I don't like having a bunch around the goddamn... Man, there was a time where I had about 200 books, and when you move, it's a
it's
nightmare.
Terrible. It's terrible.
It is.
Yeah, I'm just... Yeah, I try to... there's a community library in our neighborhood that I just think is the greatest thing ever, because then when I'm done with a book, I'll just go put it in there.
Great.
And then grab another one. So I don't have to accumulate anything.
I got some shit in my neighborhood where they have these take a book boxes.
Yeah.
Just they look like a mailbox in their glass.
Yeah.
And you're just walking
That's
through
what
your
I'm talking
neighborhood
about.
and you're like, oh, here we go. Here's a book.
Yeah.
And you just read it and then you put it back in a box in somebody else's neighborhood,
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Ours doesn't have glass.
Yeah.
So it's not as, if it rains, then you're out of luck. But,
ooh, yeah.
But, we got the same thing.
So you land in New York when?
After school, I did the whole college thing, and I have a degree, and then I just, I felt it was ready to move on to the next place. So New York was close enough, and my sister was here already, so I was like, yeah, I'll try it. I took everything I owned, which at the time was... Maybe I had 2 suitcases, maybe one or two, and now I can't even imagine having that was all I owned. But, I just put it on the bus and came to New York.
And then, boom, I'm here, going to start a band, and is that what happens? Or you just start playing on your own?
Yeah, I just started playing on my own. I did an open mic every Monday night.
In the city? Where at?
Yeah, it was at it's not there anymore, P&G Bar. It was on the right by the Natural History Museum. And it was in the basement. It was this great... It's been there for a long time.
Total Dylan. Like in your mind, is that Dylan did it?
Yeah.
Out in the village, they're down
Totally.
here, the strumming acoustics, the rambling lyrics. I'm a tunnel man, I'm on the battle sing. Yeah, right?
The thing I loved about that one, because, New York, you can go to these open mics where everyone's just incredible, which is really great, too. But the thing I liked about this one was that it was everyone from all walks of life and all, skill levels, and not just music. There was spoken word and occasionally comedy, not that often, but
poetry and stuff like that.
All kinds of that stuff.
Still doing that stuff in this day and age, not even that long ago.
Yeah.
People down in the basement in New York.
Oh, yeah.
The world cried.
Yeah.
I've been to those, and you're like, oh, wow, this is... At some point, you're like, this is weird as fuck. And then you're like, oh, this is old school.
Yeah, it does.
There's no YouTube with these guys. Check out my YouTube channel.
No. Also, it's some of those guys have been going to the same open mic for 30, 40 years, And this one guy, I don't really know his story. I'm going to say his name, but he went by Mandola Joe, and he wore these orange shoes, and he would play in Central Park, and then he would come to the open mic, and it was just like characters like that. There were a lot of characters like that, and it was just really wonderful. And it felt like, as somebody who's just starting to perform their own songs, like a place where I could do it.
Right,
You know, I
yeah.
couldn't walk into a room like Cafe Vivaldi was one of those places that was like, it was intimidating, you know. Everyone was at the top of their game.
And were you out of the gate? Were you this style of kind of Waitsy, kind of art rock?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, this was the style. I think it's more crafted now, I hope. But yeah, I was into Tom Waits from a very young age. My mother was watching Austin City Limits.
Love it.
And I can't remember the year. He was, I think, 28 years old, you know. But same thing, you know, that voice.
Of course. But the piano ballad era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sitting at the piano, smoking a cigarette. And it was like the stage was set like a living room, you know. He was drinking, smoking, and just doing this poetry at the piano. My mother was watching it, and I came in, and I just was like, it felt like maybe a normal child my age, like going to Disney, stepping into Disneyland or the Magic Castle or something. But it was just heaven to me. And I was like, whoever that is,
Yeah.
that's my kind of people. I must have been 8 years old, you know. So
Wow.
And
Well, he might have been a little bit of a character to you at 8 years old, a lot like, you know, seeing something.
Definitely.
It's like, what is that?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So that was always something that I liked. And when I was growing up, I listened to a lot of things, but I really loved songwriting, and storytelling.
Yeah.
Mainly. So the singers, the songwriters who were really crafting a story.
Yeah.
That's what I love.
You know, Carole King Tapestry is a top 5 record to me of all time.
Yeah.
It's a record I still to this day listen to every Sunday. And these type of people, and later on getting into Wilco and Sunvold and Lucinda Williams and the alt country world, getting into that kind of stuff, I've always been attracted to that also. Bruce being the king of it with like Thunder Road or, you know, growing up and all that stuff of telling a story, but not just sounding like you're just reading out of a book, you know?
Right.
And that is a great skill of lyrics. There's all types of lyrics. There's the rhyming lyrics. There's the hip hop lyrics. There's folk lyrics. There's abstract lyrics. But when there's storytelling lyrics done really well, it grabs you beyond.
Yeah.
And you never forget it. And nobody's. It sounds like you. It's tales from your life. Hopefully,
Right.
a lot like writing stand up.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
It's not that different, really. Right? It's like telling a story and playing with words and yeah.
At what point do you start to have like labels coming around? How does this happen? Because you were telling me that you were down there at Jay-Z's label and stuff. How does this happen?
Well, that was, you know, I played this open mic and then they were like, here, want to do an hour one time? And I was like, all right. Then I'd do an hour there every once in a while. And then I'd go to another place and be like, hey, I've been playing in New York for a while over at this place. I'd do, you know, and then they'd say, oh, cool, take an hour here. And then I'd just do that. So then I was playing in New York a bit. And the crazy thing about New York is it really does start to feel like a small
Community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then I just, you know, you get to know everybody. I did a Kickstarter for my first album. It was kind of the beginnings of Kickstarter. Amanda Palmer had just done her major, you know,
Right.
her million or whatever, and people started paying attention. But literally like right after, I think. So that was exciting. I did my first album, and you know, I think like the Rock Nation thing was just because we knew someone who knew someone, basically. I think
Right.
how that happens. That was definitely not the right fit for
Right.
what I do, but it was a great experience. And
It was a funny story you tell me. Like, they have you down, and it's just like the rock label thing you have in your mind. You open up a glass door, there's a long table, some dudes at the end slide you a contract to the other end. So you want to be famous?
Yeah.
And make records? You're like, oh shit, it's happening. You don't even look at anything, you just sign it.
Yeah.
And you walk out like, we're going to be stars.
Yeah.
And you can't even afford your apartment still in New York.
I know. Well, I told you I'm really glad that they didn't slide that contract across that long white table, because I would have signed it. Not read anything, just signed it. I wasn't there with a lawyer though, but I would have signed it, and it was a good experience. I just did that, I just kept moving as well as I could, kept playing.
At what point do you become, of course you're doing the open mics, just you and an acoustic, right?
Yeah.
And then when do you start playing with players?
Yeah, well, I did my release show, I guess, for the first album was the first time I played with a full band.
Because you had full band playing on the album.
On the album.
So you're like, well, now I got to do it like this.
Yeah.
And when you went in to do the album, were the band and other people going like, hey, let's form this around bands? Because you're going to play it different when you're playing acoustic.
Sure.
You ditch out spots that are for solos.
Yeah.
You'll drop arrangements will be totally different when you're playing by yourself.
Definitely.
So when you get into the studio, or you're like, whoa, this is totally different.
It was different. That first album was such a learning experience. It really was. It's not even something that I consider like part of my catalog. I consider it kind of pre-catalog. It was like, I had to do that in order to then like learn, okay, I don't want to do that, and that. Yeah, it was totally different. I had to learn how to, I don't know. I think it also changed the way that I started writing moving forward. Hearing songs as more than just guitar.
Absolutely.
And vocals. And so, I don't think there were any solos or like kind of featured instrument things in that first album so much. It might sound, I haven't revisited it. I'll just like leave it behind. But it probably sounds like me sitting in that dark P&G basement playing and then throwing some
beats behind it.
Yeah.
You got some beats.
Yeah.
Have you ever experimented with that? It's one of my favorite records of all time is Sea Changes by Beck. And I think that Beck at that time, started laying down these loops and just playing these really cool tunes to loops. Did you ever get into that?
I never did. No, I never did. I have experimented a little bit more recently with, electronic instruments.
Great.
I used to be very much like a purist.
I hear you.
And so with a lot of things, and I think I just had to be broken down and, my mind had to be busted open a bit. But I've been able to explore the electronic instruments a bit, and I haven't done the looping thing.
Well, I'm glad that you probably have, because what happened was he did it, and then all of a sudden there was 700 people doing it. I think that he was the master at it, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh well, you got Lilith Fair and you got the Horde Tour, and you have these kind of singer-songwriter guys that are out there, even like Everlast. He had a great one.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, everybody just had an acoustic and loops.
Right.
And after a while, you're like, oh, I get it, acoustic and loops. And then here comes, like, say, Wilco and stuff, where they're like, we're going to kind of get more into the traditional pure playing of the instruments. So I dig both. And as long as, record companies are just looking for anything that's hot. They're like, wait a minute, this is hot. We got to just get everyone that has acoustic, and, they got the pedal on the ground and they start building their loops and their sounds and putting down the bed layers. And then here they are up there, one-man band type of thing.
Yeah.
And, everything just starts to get too much, and then you gravitate towards something else. So it is nice to stick with what you do, because eventually it comes around again, and you're like, I've been here forever.
Right. It's like you just wear the same clothes for forever, and then eventually it'll be
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the proof of that is with bell bottoms. Those suckers, I've seen them twice in my lifetime. I saw them in the 70s and I saw them in the early 2000s when the Black Crows were strutting around in them. I was like, that's what we wear now.
Yeah.
I think I got some over here. Oh, they're size 27. I don't have that waist anymore. But yeah, you're right. You're right. I want to get into this new record because I absolutely love this. I love everything about it. I love the artwork, which is fantastic. I don't know who did that.
Yeah, that's John Vochatzer. He's out of San Francisco.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I put it on, like I said, Eric McFadden, who's one of my oldest friends from the Bay Area. He's not from the Bay Area, but that's where we worked together nightly for years. I put it on and I was like, wow, this is really good. Do you feel that it is like, this is definitely the way I'm going to be going from now on?
I think that it definitely feels like my sound right now.
Right.
And like, you know, with the last album, that's where I feel like I really got, okay, this is who I am as a musician, and then built off that from there. And so I feel that way about this one as well. Just keep building.
I do know, like, as a comedian, you get to this kind of, I'm at 10 years now, and people always say, well, you kind of start finding your voice at 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I'm about 10 years as
right,
well.
and you start to figure out the whole thing of who you are. Because you start out, you've got your influences. So that's kind of who you are. And then you kind of get into some other influences, then that mixes in. And then eventually it all stirs in a pot. And you hopefully it starts to become you. And that's really what I meant, where you do this record and you go, this is really kind of what I've been hearing for a few years, and I think I'm getting there.
Yeah, definitely. I felt like that with the last album for The Wolfish and Wandering. And then I think for me, then what happens is that I was like, okay, this is it. Let me play with it a little bit. So that's kind of... You know, I feel like for me, this album, I always like to write with kind of a smirk, you know. I don't want anything, but I got even less precious with it. Like, I was like, let me just, you know.
Not be so serious?
Yeah, I never have been so serious per se with the writing, but I get really precious about stuff, you know, about songs and... being just right, and you know, and also lyrically, like, you know, it's my own shit. Like I feel like it's got to be up to par or whatever. And I think there's something really wonderful about saying, let's just have fun, let's just feel good. You know, obviously, like, I feel like I've gotten to a place where I have kind of honed my writing and myself as a musician, and so now I can kind of just, you know, breathe a bit and lean into it, I guess. There
is that interesting kind of fine line of, I really, you know, love like a Bill Hicks or a Marin or a Burr, and I really watch out of doing goofy comedy.
Yeah.
Because I'm not really a goofy type of guy. For instance, if you hear Tom Waits Going Out West, I think if somebody else sang that, it would be kind of corny, you know.
For sure.
I look good without a shirt, you know, and you just kind of like, it's almost jokey. But with him, I understand that he's poking fun at, like, say, Los Angeles and these people that look good and and they've got the convertibles and they're flashy and stuff. It's funny. There's a fine line. So there is some jokes, like a Dave Chappelle, where some of his stuff is kind of goofy and fun, and then some is real, like, hey, man, listen up. This is what's going on in the world. Mm-hmm. And it is kind of weird, right, when you're writing lyrics, because you're like, well, I want this to be like, you know, you get into that high water mark of, like, say, Lucinda Williams, where you're like, I want to be taken serious. Right. So you're afraid to wave off of that a little bit. Yeah. Which is bizarre, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, do you feel like as you keep going that you sort of think about that stuff less?
I think I'm at a point right now where I think that there's a surface look that people look at me as like, oh, he with tattoos and oh, here comes the rocker. And I really try to consciously write something that I'm saying something in the jokes. Before, I was just all about get laughs.
Right.
Now I'm like, get laughs is part of it, but what do I want to say?
Yeah.
With the bits? What do I want to say? And what can I say that will have this kind of deep feeling?
Right.
So I don't know. It's confusing because you lay all kinds of pressure on yourself and you look at your idols and you unrealistically try to be at that level.
Yeah.
But I do believe that you should try to shoot for the high water mark or else you're just going to always be this surface thing. You know what I'm saying? So it's a strange world of writing. 'Cause sometimes I write something and I go, this is funny, but it's dumb.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do need dumb. There's a joke right now I do if I want to just kind of, I can't be like, serious the whole set. It's comedy.
Right.
So I got a bit right now where I go, I feel like I'm getting old. I said this today. Wow, the new Honda Civic's kind of sweet. And that just came out of my mouth one day. I was like, what? Honda Civic? There's nothing sweet about it. But it happened to me one day, so I said that on stage, and it gets a big-ass laugh. So there is a kind of a goofiness to it. I think it's a push and pull.
Yeah,
if you're just serious the whole time. Sometimes, let's say you're going to see a Karen Finley, let's say, who's like, a performance artist. This is going to be serious.
Right.
And I do love dramas more than comedies as far as films. But I love comedy. So it's a twisted world.
Yeah. I relate to that in my own way, I think, where, I think at the beginning I just wanted to write stuff that sounded cool from like a writer's perspective, like kind of twisting words and wordplay and stuff like that. And as long as it sounded cool, I was like one of those people that was like, I don't want to talk about the meaning of my songs. But part of it was because I wasn't super clear on the meaning of my songs.
Oh yeah.
And but it sure, like, the lyrics sounded good, it was pleasing to the ears. And now I relate in the sense that I'm like, all right, what am I trying to say? And even if I have a line that sometimes I'm like, this line's so good, this line's so good, but it doesn't quite fit. I'm not going to try to shoehorn it in. I'm just about now focus on focus.
Yeah.
Just focus, hopefully.
Lyrics are crazy hard. They're so hard. I really love this guy, Tim Bloom from the Mother Hips. Bay Area band. So I was always trying to be at a Tim Bloom level. His lyrics were just so twisted and wild, but not weird sci-fi or arty. They were just this, it was way deep. So I always went for that. And I remember, I think my favorite lyric I ever wrote was about San Francisco, me leaving, me moving out of there. And the line was, there's nothing left here now but some souvenirs. And it was my favorite lyric in the 25 years of playing music because that's what San Francisco had become. The .com had came in and all these techies and everything. And it was that there was no more soul. There was nothing there except for maybe Pier 39. Get your souvenirs.
Right.
Here's my Alcatraz snow globe. And it was, when that lyric came out, I was like, God damn, that's a fucking great lyric for me.
Yeah.
And I thought if I could and so I really dug into that song for months until it was perfect, every line.
Yeah.
And so when I hear it now, I go, that's my favorite song I ever wrote. There it is, the lyrics. So I look at comedy like that. And comedy is word for word. If you look at the greats, like a Seinfeld or somebody, there's no fat in there.
Yeah.
And there shouldn't be any fat on song lyrics either, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great I love that. I mean, I think that made me think of two people, a comedian and a songwriter, but like Mitch Hedberg, there's zero fat.
Zero fat.
And Leonard Cohen.
Zero fat.
Zero fat.
Yeah.
And that guy, I don't know how Mitch Hedberg wrote, but I know Leonard Cohen is a writer who just is on, it takes him forever. You know, it's about getting and I guess it's trimming the fat. It takes a lot of time. I think that's how I used to write. I've spent a month on one word before, you know.
Oh yeah.
And for me, where I had to go was like, I guess you get to a point where you do that enough that then, at least like for me, I had to trust myself then that I could do it well enough without taking a whole month on one word, because it's just, wasn't sustainable. But like, I think there's a tune on the album called Honey Dripper, and I wrote that with a couple friends, and I think it's generally like the one that's most broadly appealing. Is just like a fat bass line, like, and it's a repetitive bass line. I mean, it's just like you feel it hits, and the song is like nothing I've ever written before. She's a honey dripper.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I will not bash another woman, but I'll tell you what she is. She's a honey dripper. Like, and I never would have put that on an album before. It's, you know, it's silly, but I think, you know, to always be kind of, I can't take myself so seriously all the time. Like, I write with a smirk, and it doesn't have to be like Leonard Cohen.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, there's plenty of people out there that just throw lyrics together, jokes together, and they don't. It doesn't bother them what they're, you know, they're just, here it is.
Right.
And to me, I was always like, well, where is there something further than a dick joke or just a blues ditty, I used to call it in music, you know, where it's just like, I'm going to go and don't feel the pain, you know.
Yeah.
And people love that, you know, they're like, oh man, play that one again. We get a move, you know.
I know.
And I'm over here like, yeah, but what about this song I wrote? It took 2 years called Blue. You're skipping over it, you bastard, you know. But
no, I'm totally on board with you with that stuff too. I think for me, it's just my own personal journey of like, okay, chill out. Like,
yeah,
you don't have to be some prolific, you know.
Well, there is that thing where you're hoping. Like they say, you know, I'm playing to the comics in the back of the room. You're hoping that they go like, yeah, this guy's getting pretty good. You're always hoping that people are like, they're not walking through, say, and they judge you for a honey dripper. You know, somebody walking through like, oh, honey dripper, huh? Oh, you know. And really, it's like, hey, that's me having fun after years of just fucking going crazy.
Yeah.
So I think there is this hope that you, like you said, do you find yourself caring less about that stuff now? And I do. I don't really care what the people in the room think, but I do want to be able to lay down at night and go, fuck, I'm starting to figure this out.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Definitely. I think, you know, sometimes I like to think of it like, you know, feeding the kid, like tricking them into eating their vegetables, like the mac and cheese with like the broccoli.
Yeah, guide them in with the honey dripper.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're eating broccoli.
Yeah.
Stuff that's good for them.
Right. I think that, you know, that's sort of the way that this album unfolds as well is sort of like off the top, it's very much what I do. And then it gets into some kind of poppy stuff, you know. Yeah. But it's hopefully easing the listener into like then kind of the meat of it and the more the stuff that you might have to think about a bit more.
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about with the Honda Civic joke. Right. You get them going on that. Now they're listening. Now let's take them on a ride into some stuff that they might have closed off. You know, it's that old thing of Bill Hicks, play to the highest IQ in the room. Mm-hmm. which is an interesting way to perform. And hopefully, start building those people tell the other people that are smart that they like,
Right.
hey, you got to go see this. And but meanwhile, while you're in the room, maybe people don't know what they're into. So you get them with a Honda Civic joke.
Yeah.
And then you take them on this ride of where you're at. So, yeah, it is. It's a weird game of performing because, especially in the ADD world now, phones, people need to be spoon-fed, say, a cover band or the surface jokes, the dick jokes or something to even pull their face from the phone for a while.
Yeah.
So it's really a strange world to perform in.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too, like just looking at that photo of like Bill Burr on this, just like seeing a stage like that, and a room like that with one person standing on the stage is just wild to me. That's
right.
Like, but to engage us who are used to just constant stimulation, how do you engage someone like that as one person standing on the stage with a microphone?
Once I saw Henry Rollins, of course there was early comedians I was into Pryor, Worship Carlin, and growing up, Kinnison. I grew up on comedy, but once I see Rollins at UC Berkeley, that was it for me. I was like, I don't know how he did that, but I just sat here for 3 hours and wasn't even fazed. And, I've been able to tell some stories to people and they've been engaged, but for 3 hours or whatever. So there's an art to it. And it is also that old thing of building up your crowd. Once you've got your audience, then it's almost like anything goes.
Right.
Because they know who you are from a podcast. They know who you are from years of performing.
Right.
So, but as a stranger, a lot of times I'm opening. Mm-hmm. And maybe, like last night, 5,000 people, maybe 1,000 know who I am from listening to Bill's podcast for years because he'll mention my name or whatever. The rest, you have to be out there with just the confidence of your material.
Yeah.
Like I've performed for strangers every night in New York City and in Los Angeles. I know how to do this. Mm-hmm. The bigger the room, the easier.
Right.
The easier. They're not in there. There's no check drops. They're on dates. Usually they're ready to go. Sometimes you could clown them like, yeah, look, I know you fucking don't want to watch the opener. I didn't like opening bands when I came, But sometimes you miss Radiohead, when they were on an opening tour.
Yeah.
So it's just the being ready.
Yeah.
That's all it was. The 5,000 shows I've done, being ready.
Yeah.
And you know that. You go, hey, I've been here. You go out and open for somebody big, and you're like, I got this.
Yeah.
Right? Who's the biggest person you opened for?
I haven't done it. I haven't really done much opening stuff.
But you played on some festivals and stuff?
Yeah, I've done some festivals. I've done, let's see, I'm trying to think, like, I've done Mountain Stage and Americana Fest.
But those are great, great things. And so a lot of times the people are there to see the headliner.
Yeah.
So you just go up and, you start picking off one at a time, as slow as that is. I think I've been going now for 11 years, and it's that old saying, if you have 1,000 true fans, you could do comedy or music the rest of your life, or art.
Yeah.
So you're just hoping you get 1,000, and that sounds easy, but it's hard as hell.
I know.
Try getting 100 Instagram followers. Try getting that first. It's like, what is going on here? People call me up, they're like, dude, I can't get any followers. I'm like, well, you posted a month ago.
Right.
Who's going to follow you, And it's not about followers. It's just, I'm just talking about, like, you just have to love what you do and just keep grinding.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that concept of the 10,000 hours thing, there's really something to it.
There really
is.
It's
just putting in the time.
Well, I love the record. It's out right now. And you're going to have vinyl this week, right?
Yeah, we actually, they've been shipped.
I can't wait to see that. And this is out on CD. And it's on iTunes and everywhere.
That's right.
And you got a website?
I do. KateVargas.com.
Okay, and you got some gigs coming up?
Yeah, I'll be in, doing Orton Festival in Madison, Wisconsin.
When's that?
28th, I believe, is the date.
Yeah.
And
well, all your dates are on your website.
They
right?
are, yeah, they are. And then we'll do like Bay Area stuff.
Yeah.
And then North Mendocino and
full band?
Some of those will be full band. Some of them will just be me and Eric.
Yeah.
When we do have a full band, well, when we're just the two of us, it's fantastic, I would say. We also, when we're having the bands, we're having like the best players.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then we're going to be back in Albuquerque, going back to Albuquerque in the first time in a year and a half. So, yeah, that's October.
Where's that at?
Sister Bar in Albuquerque. Yeah.
And then they can get the vinyl on the website?
The vinyl's on my website. They just were, they're all printed up. So, and we did like a cool, it's like the first batch we did red, like these great red vinyl. After that, it's going to be just
Give them the name of the album again.
Rumpumpo.
And it's Kate Vargas, Vargas. And I highly recommend you check this out. It is, I heard it and I was like, wow, I got to have you on. And I just really like this record. It's got a cool vibe. You know, the artwork almost has the vibe of Los Lobos' Colossal Head. I don't know if you ever heard that record, but it kind of reminds me of that. I love it.
I gotta look it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, in San Francisco, you can see when we went back there recently, and I saw John's collages. Just like we'd come to a stoplight, and there would be his collage. He's like really making
just street art, huh?
Street art. He also just opened a gallery there, Mothbelly. But yeah, check him out too.
Don't forget to follow her. Oh, you got an Instagram.
Kate Vargas Music.
Kate Vargas Music. Follow her on Instagram. Hit her website, katevargas.com, and spread the word. Let's support new artists and tell everybody about this music. Thank you for tuning in. Candles lit.